involved very actively for the last 2 years in a program called Our Energy, Our Future. And it's our response to the climate change legislation that's being debated. Unless you've been living in a dark cave, I'm sure you're aware of the issues. But just in a nutshell, some scientists are blaming releases of carbon dioxide for changing the climate. It's interesting how now it's climate change. It used to be global warming, but things have been a little colder in the summertime, so they had to change the point of view a little bit. This program came along. Those are actually some members at Como's meetings working with this program. And just tell you just a little bit about what Our Energy, Our Future is. And basically it's our response to a concern that policymakers could make electricity unaffordable. You all receive an electric bill, and I'm sure you all agree that it's high enough. It doesn't need to be any higher. It's an effort on our part to make sure that Congress considers the real consequences of what this legislation could do, and to remind them that there's real people out there at the end of the lines. Because early in this debate, not a single person was talking about the cost. All you heard, if you can remember back a couple, 3 years ago, all you heard was, we need to do something. We've got to pass a bill. We've got to do something. And there was so much pressure on Congress that it was a real concern that they were going to act without really looking to the end of this. So we wanted to maybe slow them down a little bit and just get them really thinking about it a little bit. This is what it's not. It's not a debate on whether climate change is taking place. We're not scientists. We do have some very good economists on our staff. We're very good about generating electricity and getting it to the end user. But we really aren't debating the science of this, although there's quite a few questions out there. It hasn't been an attempt really to defeat the legislation. Basically what we're looking for is a seat at the table. We'd like to be actively involved in the debate. We'd like to get our point of view across. And that's basically essentially what it is when you boil it all down. We really wanted to get involved in this campaign because Missouri is one of the states that's going to see a big impact from this. And just for the very fact that we use a lot of coal to generate electricity. In fact, about 80% of our power comes from coal. And that seems to be the target in this legislation, and everything they do is kind of directed at coal-fired power plants. We see it vital that we have affordable and reliable electricity, especially those of you who are small business owners involved in agriculture and that sort of thing. Economy is on shaky footing right now. We need to keep the economy vibrant, and people desperately need to be able to count on electricity when it comes down to it. And as I mentioned before, no one else was speaking for consumers on this issue. So we felt the electric cooperatives needed to do that. I mentioned real consequences for real people. As we started looking into this, you realize the people that are out there. Senior citizens, we determined we have a heavy number of senior citizens on our lines. About, I think, something like 35% over the age of 65, and of those, about 83% are retired, living on fixed income. A good number of college students are on our lines, believe it or not. I was a member of Boone Electric Cooperative when I was at University of Missouri. Can't afford rate increases. Farmers right now, breaks our heart to see what's happening to them. Very many of them, especially the dairy farmers, struggling to make a profit. And also small business owners. My brother owns the KFC in California, Missouri, and just got that off the ground, and I know he struggles, you know, to keep things going there. So I can really relate to that. There's an old Missouri saying, it's better to have a seat at the table than to be the meal. And folks, when this legislation first started being debated, it was pretty obvious that rural people were going to take it on the chin on this. We just couldn't really sit back and let that happen. So we really wanted to get involved. And you could say, if you were a real cynic, you could say, why should a utility care? I mean, if the price goes up, if it costs us more to generate electricity, we can just pass it on to the consumer and ask them to pay it. And I know there are utilities in this country that would be their attitude. It's not the attitude of the electric cooperatives. As you look at the people that are out there on our lines, many of the employees are also members. We're very close to our membership. Our directors, of course, are members of the cooperative. And here's just a few of the statistics that we found. When energy costs go up, it's always the poor. A good portion of their dollars are going to go to energy. If you look around, if you're poor, where are you likely to live? Probably substandard housing. You might be living in a 1950s mobile home, and they spend 33% of their income will go to energy. Might have to turn those air conditioners off in the summer, might have to live without heat in the winter. Our areas are 16% lower incomes on average. Pretty tough times in rural areas now. And as I mentioned before, a third of our members are older than 65 and 83% of those are retired. These are the kind of people that we're concerned about the most. So as this campaign kicked off, we started asking some very tough questions of our elected officials. And now when I say this, I'm talking about the national ones, the U.S. representatives and our senators who are considering this legislation. Not quite a state issue right now, but we do want to make our state people aware of what's going on. And these are the questions we asked them. What's your plan to ensure we have reliable energy in the future? Because it's one thing to pass a bill that limits greenhouse gas emissions, but is that going to mean we can't generate electricity? What are you doing to fund research to make clean generation a reality? There again, we've got to have some options. And if they're going to forget that, the country's going to be in trouble. The third question we thought was the most important is how much is all this going to cost me? And we were able to really make them aware of these consequences. And finally, will you work with my electric co-op to be sure public policy meets my need for affordable electricity? And there we were looking for a seat at the table. And I'll talk some more about that. Our lofty goal, we hope we could get 250,000 messages into Congress through this campaign. And early on that seemed kind of far-fetched. As of right now, we've got 656,000 messages were sent. This is just in Missouri. Nationwide, 3.2 million. So it's pretty obvious that this struck a chord with people, rural people nationwide. Missouri did lead that effort. We were way ahead of most of the states. And finally, we did get that seat at the table we were looking for. Just this October, my boss, Barry Hart, was invited to testify before the Senate's Environment and Public Works Committee. We've got some clips. If you get on YouTube, you can find his testimony on there. That was a direct result of a campaign we did this summer as the Senate started working on this. We asked members to sign postcards and send them in. And this picture is a little hard to see, but this is Senator Bond, and he brought the stack of postcards in. Each one of those the thickness of a piece of paper. Big stack went up over his head. Something like 60,000, I think, altogether went in just in that part. And just asking Congress to think about people as they do this legislation. And so kind of a hostile crowd. Senator Boxer chaired that, but we were able to get some good points across in that. And I think the best point was right at the end when Barry told them if this legislation is going to work, people are going to have to accept it. They're going to have to buy into it. So don't just run over people.